Hey everybody, it is Carlos Whittaker, and I want to let you know that you're watching The Libby Show.
How did she do it? Do it.
Libby. Libby. Libby.
3, 2,
Libby.
1.
It's the Libby Show.
Hey friends, Libby here. Welcome to a brand new episode of The Libby Show. Today's guest is an author, podcaster, and global speaker, and he spent 7 weeks screen-free and wrote a book about it. Reconnected. Carlos Whittaker, welcome to the show. How are you?
Libby, I'm here. It flows off the tongue so well. The Libby Show.
I love to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I ever really tell people, but my last name is Ulrich, and that's just a lot, you know?
The Libby Ulrich Show. I mean, it's fine,
It's
but
fine.
Libby fun.
Libby is way more fun.
Yeah.
So I loved this book.
Oh, thank you.
And I think one of my favorite parts is in the beginning, you tell all of us, this isn't a book about how phones are bad.
Right.
We're not going to use social media anymore.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
what have we lost by making our phones the primary?
Yes, absolutely. I say that this book isn't about how bad phones are.
Yeah.
It's about how beautiful it is on the other side of the phone. And we've actually just forgotten.
Yeah.
And what my 7 weeks did is it allowed me to legitimately fall back in love with all of these things that we've forgotten how to do. And now I pick up my phone less because I'm doing all these other things instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of great things, connecting with your family more as
Oh,
you talk
yeah.
about. And then even your Insta Familia.
That's right.
You
That's
know?
right. The Insta Familia. The Insta Familia is my Instagram followers, I guess. And we do so much good together. You know, we've raised over $1 million together for people. We do a lot of really cool things. And I could never have done any of that without my phone. So again, this book is not about why phones are bad. There's enough books about why phones are bad. There's enough research about why phones are bad. We all know phones are probably not great for us. But I do know that they do good things.
They do.
They're neither good nor bad. They're just a piece of metal and screens and glass, right? But it's really about us. This book is about us. And, you know, there's actually a story that came out in the New York Times in like early 1900s that was talking about how the kaleidoscope was going to be the end of mankind. Literally because little kids were walking around the streets of New York City with this brand new, for people that don't know what a kaleidoscope is, you know, it's like almost a telescope, you spin it and the glass kind of, well, kids were so addicted to these things that they were walking around the streets of New York City, running into signs, walking off the road, hitting, you know, whatever. And the article was like, the kaleidoscope is going to be the end. And I'm like, the phone is just the next kaleidoscope. There's always going to be something else. I think if we can just start reconnecting with who we were created to be, we're going to pick up our screens less.
Yeah, and you have a chapter called Perspective in here. So
I do.
I
Absolutely.
mean, yeah, read it for yourself.
Yes.
Okay, so I do have to ask, when I got to the second half, so you spent a couple weeks with monks.
I did 2 weeks.
And then you spent time with family in between, which was really cool.
A couple days, 2 days. 2 days with family. So it's 2 weeks with monks, 2 days with family, and then 2 weeks with the Amish, and then 3 weeks with family. So
that's a good order, I feel like.
good
It's
order.
healthy.
Yep.
Something that I was thinking about when I got to the section about going to stay with the Amish family.
Yes, absolutely.
I noticed you're quickly very immersed in the community, the dinner table.
Yeah.
Whereas the first part of the book, solitude is like the main focus.
Absolutely.
So do you feel like had you flip-flopped,
Great
would
question.
that
Great question.
have changed things?
I actually flip-flopped to get it to where it ended up.
Okay.
I was going to go to the Amish first. And I think this book, the experiment, everything would have been completely different. Because there was something necessary about the literal shock to the ecosystem of my body that went from 7.5 hours a day on my phone, because that's how long I was spending on my phone.
A whole day.
Yeah, 7.5 hours a day to 23 hours a day of silence with no screens. That was my first 2 weeks. So I think the juxtaposition between, you know, the monks and the solitude, it's like living in a cave. And then I moved to Manhattan when I moved in with the Amish. They were community, go, visit, go, you know, 24/7. It was definitely pretty shocking. And so yes, the first half of the book I think is a very introspective look as to kind of who we are, what have these devices turned us into inside, and then the second half is well, actually, like, what has it turned us into outside?
Yeah.
You know, and so, like, yeah, the Amish was everything was kind of outside of myself. The monks was definitely very inside of myself.
And I'm sure you were more present when you visited the Amish too, because you had taken so much disconnection time from your phone that
yeah.
you were like, oh, cool. Well, now I have to make, I'm used to making eye contact now. So like,
yeah. Eye contact is something that we're literally not.
we don't
like.
No.
Like people don't like it. If you look at someone in the eyes too long in the grocery store, they're like, what are you looking at?
What are you doing?
You know, and it's just like, that's actually what we were created to do. Something that never happened to me for 7 weeks, which was crazy, was I never got a single notification on my body, right? So my wrist didn't buzz, my pocket didn't ding. I was locked in with the person I was talking to for the entirety of every conversation. And so by the time I got to the Amish, I was just used to that. And it's funny because even with the Amish, it happens sometimes, and with the monks, sometimes, because they still had phones.
They still had,
Like monks had phones. And I would be in the middle of a conversation spilling my guts to this, monk, across the table in his study with books all around. And it's like a very monkey moment. And then all of a sudden, like, bzz, bzz, and he's like, oh, excuse me, young man. And he picks up his phone and he's like, oh, sorry, that's my brother. Okay, anyway, what were you saying? And I'm like, did this really just happen? Did a monk just freaking do this to me? So this isn't a problem that we just have, and that are influencers or on our screens that, working. Like, it's coming after us all. And so, yes, to be fully present for 7.5 weeks, for 7 weeks, actually it was 7.5 because I ended up not turning my phone on after I got it back, was a gift that I didn't know that I needed.
Yeah.
And to be fully present and fully aware with every single word of every single person that's in front of me was a gift that, the way that I've kept it, so my phone has legitimately been, for 2 years, on permanent do not disturb. So like my phone is on, I get no notifications on my phone. Now, I've set it up to where if my family calls me, only calls, not texts, if they call me, it'll buzz. But anything besides that, I will see what I need to see when I pick my phone up. Because they're also waiting for me, right? The notifications are still on the screen, but it's not telling me that something. So it's never removing me from the conversation I'm in. And so that's one of the gifts that I think I got out of this whole experiment.
And speaking of, you got your brain scanned before you went on your trip, and then you got your brain scanned again.
I did.
And of course, we're all, reading through this to see what were the results,
what were the results? Absolutely, yeah. So Dr. Daniel Amen, he's it's weird to say, but like a influencer neuroscientist.
Yeah.
I guess. He scans the brains of all these celebrities. And so, yeah, I just kind of reached out to him on Instagram or TikTok. I can't remember what it was. And I was like, hey, would you scan my brain? I'm doing an experiment. Will you scan it twice, before and after? He was like, absolutely. So yes, my before scan was a good baseline. And actually, you can actually watch that episode on his YouTube channel of the whole 20. So he's got a 20-minute episode on my first brain scan. They haven't released the second one yet, which is my after brain scan. You got to buy the book.
I'll link it.
To do that. But there were definite differences. And I'm talking about massive differences, especially in my cognitive ability. My father, it's a story I share on Instagram, has dementia. And so I'm very in tune with brain health, what can keep me from going down that road. And let me tell you, when I didn't look at a screen for 7 weeks, my memory exploded. Like, I'll tell you this, my cognitive memory scores went from the 50th percentile to the 99th percentile. So there was only 1% of humans that had better memory than me when I finished my 7 weeks. Take that.
Take that.
Yeah.
Take that.
There we go.
And definitely read how that happened in this book.
Yeah.
Something that I was thinking about too when it comes to what you're saying, your cognitive memory and ability.
Sure.
There's one part of the book that I really connected with. You said in the chapter being, I sit under these trees and talk to God out loud. I'm sure I look crazy, but it's good for me. Talking out loud to an invisible God is sometimes the only way I can feel like he is real.
Yeah.
No journaling yet, just talking. I am doing my best to just be. And I've noticed with the way that like my mind wanders and I get distracted just laying there, I actually can't sometimes pray to God without saying it out loud to stay focused.
Absolutely.
Like what has happened where we can't.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll tell you what has happened is we're so used to relying on external factors to be our connection to God. And I didn't have those anymore, right? Like suddenly I was stuck to where I didn't have a sermon podcast I could listen to. I didn't have an audiobook I could listen to. I didn't have a, whatever it was, all of these things that were kind of my connection to God were wiped out. And suddenly I was just left with me and him.
Yeah.
And I just was like, holy cow. And let me tell you, when you're so used to constant consumption of content, you go through a little bit of a crazy spell when you completely disconnect. And I did. I had like 4 days where it was
The first week, I'm
yeah,
sure.
I mean, it was rough, and I was literally coming off of this drug called knowledge that I think we're addicted to. But gosh, when you lower the volume of life, the volume of God goes up, and it just exploded suddenly. Like I'm like, okay, God, I'm tired of you talking to me. Like I need a break, because I realized He's actually speaking to us all the time. We just have the volume of life so loud. So when the volume of life goes down, bam, and then I was like locked in and literally changed my life.
Yeah, and there's even a couple of parts where you talk about how you're walking to and from, different places when you're with the monks, and you were noticing the trees and the birds, and it was like you were in like Bambi or something.
Yeah,
no,
literally. So here's the deal. Like, I did this mini experiment at the Atlanta airport a couple years ago. I was standing at the top of the escalator. If you've ever been to the Atlanta airport, these escalators are like 4 stories tall, right? And I said, I'm going to count 100 people. And I'm going to see, out of the 100 people, how many people are staring at their phones on the escalator when they come up. Guess how many?
I mean, all of them.
100. 100 out of 100 people were looking down. So when I didn't have something to look down, I'm now just walking around like this. And yeah, I tell a story in there where I remember seeing something buzzing on the ground when I was walking, and I thought it was a cicada, because I'm from Nashville, right? So
Yeah.
I freaked out, and I'm like kind of avoiding it. But then I looked a little closer, and I was like, no, that's not a cicada, it's a hummingbird. Then I got a little closer, and it was a baby hummingbird.
Oh,
so I
cute.
scoop up this baby hummingbird, and it literally crawls on my finger, crawls on my, and then it's chirping, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what do? How do I feed a hummingbird? Reach for my phone. Don't have my phone. So I can't Google how do you feed a baby hummingbird. Like I'm literally stuck in wondering how to do this. So I just kind of figured out the next 2 days, I'm sitting with this hummingbird, right? Like I set it outside my little cabin, I go feed it, I go check on it, and I'm thinking, this is gonna be the worst part of my trip, is I'm gonna watch this baby hummingbird starve to death. Because it kept sitting on the same little branch, it would peep every time I'd come out. And then day 2, I'll never forget, I see another hummingbird come down and start feeding the baby hummingbird. And then within 3 hours, the baby hummingbird was gone, flew away. I had the most amazing time with this baby hummingbird that I never would have had, because I normally would have been looking at my phone, but instead I was looking up. And so it's a whole chapter on noticing. We've forgotten what it's like to notice things around us, because we're constantly gazing down and glancing up instead of gazing up and glancing down.
Well, and to your point, noticing isn't always an instant.
No.
I mean, nature obviously isn't moving as fast as a Google search.
Absolutely.
You're having to wait for when they have to eat, because they're not Googling, when they're not ordering DoorDash, they're just...
No, it's so true. We were just on a safari. I was just on a safari with my family. And the safari guide had to remind us, like, hey, now listen. Oh, no, because we went out on the first game drive.
Yeah.
And we saw like a lion, prowling and like, chasing a gazelle. And we saw all of these things. And he came back and he's like, now I need to let you know, that was not normal. Like, I don't like push a button when we get in the safari truck, like at Disneyland, and like, release the lions, nature moves at its own pace. It moves. And so we have to slow down enough to be able to be around and present to capture when we see it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love it. So you wrote a book called How to Human.
I did.
A few years ago.
I did.
And you talk about, recalibrating and not rebuilding.
Yeah.
What was it like writing Reconnected after writing How to Human? Because I mean...
Yeah, How to Human, the subtitle of How to Human is 3 ways to share life beyond what distracts, divides, and disconnects us.
Yeah.
So, it's so funny that Reconnected is the name of this book.
Yeah.
Disconnected was a part of what the last book was. So this book was really like, almost like the How to Human experiment, right? It was almost like I was like, okay, I wrote about all this stuff, about like spending time with people that are nothing like us, having conversations with people that you vehemently disagree with. That's what the last book was about. And I was like, what if I actually did it? So what if I actually moved in with the Amish, who can I tell you right now, I don't see eye to eye with the Amish on a lot of things. There's a reason why they're Amish and why they live that way, right? And there's a reason why I don't, right? So we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. But the piece of how to human that's in this book is I was just putting into practice seeing people that were nothing like me, being with people that don't look like me, think like me, vote like me, believe like me, love like me, all of these things. And it was so good because you can rage at people with your thumbs on a screen because they're not actually people when you're typing to them. They're an opinion. They're not a person. But when I'm sitting across from Willis, my Amish sheep farming mentor, my Yoda of a sheep farmer, and we get into a conversation about whatever it may be that we vehemently disagree on. We're disagreeing over an hour and a half long dinner over this amazing food that we love. And so suddenly, like, we're sharing something we love while we're disagreeing about something, and there's a shared love that is happening during the disagreement. Well, guess what? We've all but removed the table, right? We've all but removed what a meal is actually supposed to be. And I think because of that, in America, in our society, we've lost the ability to disagree with some semblance of maturity.
Yeah.
And, you know, the average American meal 100 years ago was 90 minutes long. The average American meal, get this, think about this for a second. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the average length of time, that means some of the meals were 2 hours long, right? Was 90 minutes. In 2023, the average American meal is 12 minutes.
No.
We have lost our ability to be connected over a table. So that was one of the things that the Amish really taught me that I've tried to bring back is lengthening my meals again. Sitting with people that friends of mine that we disagree politically and disagreeing over our love for a burger up burger. You know, like going to a Nashville SC game with a friend of mine that we're voting for completely different presidents, but we're cheering for the same team. And so there's just like, there's a way that we can get back to this that I think people have forgotten about. And the reason why we've forgotten about it is because we're staring at this
and we're thinking too fast instead of just listening and sitting in a statement and thinking, okay, was that at me or was that just someone's thought that they wanted to share?
And these thoughts that we disagree with are completely valid for the other person. Like their perspective is true for them. And their worldview and their life experience is true for them. We've not lived that. So there's a reason why people believe the things that they believe. And I think we've lost the art of curiosity.
Yeah.
Being curious. Curiosity leads to empathy. Empathy leads to reconciling relationships. And that's what I think we need to get back to is being curious. And that's what this experiment was. Curious. I mean, the things I learned about the monks, the things I learned about the Amish. If a sheep were to walk in that door right now, I could share that thing in 5 minutes flat.
I mean, I'd be so excited.
Yeah, literally.
Though,
like I know exactly where to put his head, like how to hold his leg. Like I've got new life skills, and I never would have had that had I not been curious. And they really did transform my life, the Amish and the monks.
What you just said, yes and curiosity. Shout out to Oddity Improv, by the way.
Shout out Oddity
Shout
Improv.
out. I took classes with them, and that was one of the exercises where you make a statement, and then I say yes and I add on to that story, but I have to think about what you're saying before I add on to it. So that's just another.
Yeah, no, it's true. No, it's
made me
good.
think of that.
It's good. It's good. And you know, leaving the Amish, you can read a book like this, and you can think like, wow, look at all these amazing things. Listen, no subculture is perfect, right? But I'm just so grateful that they invited me in. There's not a single Black Amish person, right? So they let me in, right? Like I didn't find anybody else that looked like me when I was there, but they gave me their hat. They gave me their e-bikes. They pulled me all the way into their subculture and were so kind and gracious. And I'm just so grateful for that opportunity. It's pretty cool.
Well, go check it out. Reconnected. And I love, again, that the chapter names, or some of them, I mean, are action steps.
Yes.
So be present, wonder, notice.
Yes, these are all things we've
things.
lost. Yeah, and I give handlebars at the end of every chapter that I think can legitimately, right now, you don't have to move to an Amish farm or move into a monastery. I did it for you.
Yeah.
So I give you very practical tools to kind of reclaim our life and get reconnected again.
Love it. Yeah. And you also have a documentary that you're creating. You did bring technology with you.
Yeah, so it wasn't a technology-free experiment. It was a screen-free experiment.
Yeah.
So, you know, I have a documentary coming out where I have footage from it, and everyone's like, well, wait a second. How do you have footage if you didn't bring a phone? And I was like, because you do know that they make phones and cameras separately. So I took a camera, a little Sony camera, a little pocket camera, and I just kind of would document myself talking every night, and I document some of my experiences with the Amish and the monks, without thinking I was ever going to turn it into a documentary. I just wanted to have footage that I could write when I was writing the book, I could remember. Well, I had so much footage that I gave it to a filmmaker, and he's like, I think we've got a whole documentary here. So the Reconnected documentary is coming out in October. If people want to find out about that, they can go to reconnectedbook.com.
And you, I mean, surpassed the Kickstarter, right?
Yes, yeah, the Kickstarter.
There we go, in like a
Kickstarter's
day.
already surpassed, and but all the tiers on the Kickstarter are still available. And so if people want, again, we've got merch, we've got pop sockets. I've got a pop socket to hold your phone on a documentary about not being on your phone. So like, there's all kinds of oxymorons happening. It's fun.
Yeah, and remember the days on Facebook when we used to upload photos later? This is kind of like that.
That's right. It's just like, there's one scene in the documentary where I'm holding my camera and I'm talking to the camera, right? And I'm sitting in a buggy with little Lane, who's a little Amish boy. And he's looking at it and he's watching me talk to the camera, right? I'm talking to the camera in my hand. And he literally goes, why are you talking to that? And I realized he didn't know what I was doing. I said, I'm kind of like leaving a message for somebody that they're going to get later. And he still was like, and his dad tried to explain it to him, but he could not comprehend what was happening. And so, I thought that was pretty cool. And I used to look at Amish kids legitimately, and I'd be like, oh, those poor kids. Yeah. And now that every time I see a kid with an iPad in the van scrolling by me, I'm like, oh, those poor kids. Like it's flipped for me. So pretty cool. Yeah, but the documentary's coming out in October.
Yeah, so check it out. One last question for you.
Yes.
Any new memories that you've made with your family?
Oh my God.
Like any new traditions, anything that y'all have started doing because of this whole experience?
Yeah, no, that's good. I would definitely say the length of our meals. So we've gone tech-free at the table. Literally there will never be a screen at our table. And I used to have to set a timer because we started at 30 minutes. But now I don't know when the last meal I had with my nuclear family, or now we're adding, because my daughter just got married, that has been less than 45 minutes. Like they just are long and they're rich and they're so meaningful. So yeah. Well, thank you though.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Everybody go get reconnected with Carlos Whittaker on September 10th.
Yes.
You don't want to miss out on this book and to just be human again.
Be human again.
So,
I love it.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Go subscribe to the Libby Show on YouTube. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, everywhere, and we'll see you soon.
It's the Libby Show. The Libby Show. It's the Libby Show. It's the Libby Show.